He was called the Viper. Cold, calculated, dangerous. A man who could strike at any moment without warning. But what if I told you that behind this ice-cold persona, there was once a little boy, terrified of his own destiny? A boy who carried a name so heavy it almost crushed him, and yet that same boy would rise to become one of WWE's most iconic, most decorated, and most feared superstars of all time. This is the life story of Randy Orton. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end, because his journey isn't just about wrestling. It's about family, rebellion, heartbreak, redemption, and the chilling truth of what happens when a man is born into greatness, but must fight his own demons to hold on to it. So, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear is a story you won't forget. Let's rewind. April 1, 1980, Knoxville, Tennessee. The day Randall Keith Orton entered the world. He was born into wrestling royalty. His father, Cowboy Bob Orton, was already a legend, known for his toughness and his infamous arm cast. His grandfather, Bob Orton Sr., had carved out his own respected place in the ring. Even his uncle, Barry Orton, wrestled for WWE. Wrestling wasn't just in his blood. It was in his DNA. It was his family's legacy. But sometimes, a legacy feels more like a prison. But here's the first hidden gem for you. As a child, Randy Orton didn't dream of being a wrestler. He wanted to join the Marines. Yes, the cold-blooded WWE Viper once dreamed of being a soldier, a man in uniform, serving his country. But before we get there, let's paint the picture of his childhood. Randy was restless, smart, but easily bored, charming, but quick-tempered. He had the charisma to make friends, and the temper to make enemies just as fast. And behind closed doors, the Orton household wasn't always easy. Bob Orton was on the road constantly, traveling city to city, living the chaotic life of a pro wrestler. That meant Randy often felt the absence of a father figure during those crucial early years. And when Bob was home, the relationship wasn't always smooth. Imagine being a kid trying to figure out who you are while the world already thinks it knows who you're supposed to be. That was Randy Orton's childhood. By high school, Randy had found outlets for his energy. He wrestled on his school team. He played sports. He was athletic, talented, and competitive. But there was a fire inside him he couldn't always control. Teachers noticed it. Friends noticed it. Even Randy noticed it. This temper, this unpredictability, would follow him for years. But in those teenage years, he wasn't thinking about WWE. He was thinking about the Marines. He enlisted, full of hope and determination. But here's where fate played its first cruel trick. Randy Orton never made it as a Marine. Why? Because he went AWOL. Twice. And for that, he faced a dishonorable discharge, even serving time in a military prison. Surprised? You should be. That's hidden gem number 2. Randy Orton, before ever stepping into a WWE ring, had already served 38 days in a military prison. It was a dark, humiliating chapter, one that could have broken him completely. But in a strange way, it set the stage for everything to come. Because after the Marines slammed shut in his face, Randy had only one path left to follow. The path he once wanted to avoid. The path of his family. The path of wrestling. And that's where the real story begins. After the Marines, Randy Orton came home lost, embarrassed, directionless. He had failed at the one dream he thought was his own. And that's when his father, Cowboy Bob Orton, stepped in. "Son, maybe it's time to look at what's been in front of you all along." Wrestling. The very world Randy had resisted, the very world he thought was his father's, not his. But now, it was the only door still open. So Randy stepped inside. He began training for professional wrestling, and almost instantly, it was clear. This wasn't just another wrestler's kid. This was someone different.
He had the size, 6'5", the look, chiseled, movie star handsome, the athleticism, smooth, natural, almost effortless. But above all, he had something that couldn't be taught: presence. The moment Randy Orton walked into a ring, eyes locked on him. WWE noticed. Quickly, they sent him to their developmental territory, Ohio Valley Wrestling. And this is where history gets goosebump-worthy, because at OVW, Randy trained alongside future legends: John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Batista, Shelton Benjamin. Yes, in the same class, at the same time, 5 future megastars sharpened their craft. Fans today call them the OVW5. And Randy? He stood out. Not for being the loudest, not for being the strongest, but for being so smooth, so natural, that everything he did looked effortless. There was a whisper going around even then. This kid is going to be special. But Randy had a problem: his immaturity. Behind the scenes, he was cocky, reckless. He rubbed people the wrong way. Some thought he didn't respect the business. And yet, in the ring, he kept proving everyone wrong. That contradiction, arrogant outside the ring, brilliant inside it, would become his trademark.
By 2002, WWE was ready. They called him up to the main roster, the new kid, the rookie, the one fans didn't know yet. And then, fate struck again. Not long into his debut, Randy injured his shoulder. Out of action. On the shelf. But here's where something surprising happened. Instead of fading away, Randy used his injury to build his character. He began doing fake Randy News Network updates on TV, giving cheesy health reports about his shoulder. It was ridiculous. It was cocky. It was exactly what WWE needed. Fans started noticing. This kid had charisma. Even when injured, he was entertaining. And when he returned, the timing was perfect. Because Triple H was building something new, a group called Evolution. The idea? A faction that represented the past, the present, and the future of wrestling. Ric Flair as the past, Triple H as the present, and for the future, they needed young blood. Enter Batista and Randy Orton. This was no small thing. Evolution wasn't just another faction. It was a rocket ship, and Randy was about to strap himself in. With Evolution, Randy transformed. No longer just a rookie, no longer just Bob Orton's son. He became the Legend Killer. And what a concept it was. Week after week, Randy would target WWE legends: Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley, Sergeant Slaughter. One by one, he embarrassed them, beat them, killed their legendary aura. Fans hated him for it, but deep down, they couldn't look away. Because Randy Orton wasn't just cocky, he was good. So good that you almost forgot he was only in his early 20s. And then came 2004, SummerSlam. Randy Orton faced Chris Benoit for the World Heavyweight Championship, and in a shocking twist, he won.
At just 24 years old, Randy Orton became the youngest world champion in WWE history. Hidden gem number 3? That record still stands to this day. But here's the cliffhanger. The moment he reached the top, everything came crashing down. Because the spotlight? It didn't just shine, it burned. And Randy Orton was about to find out just how dangerous success could be. SummerSlam 2004. Randy Orton was on top of the world, the youngest world champion in history, the legend killer, standing tall with the title over his shoulder. But sometimes the crown is heavier than the man who wears it. Randy wasn't ready. Not emotionally, not mentally. Behind the confident smirk, he was still a 24-year-old kid, with a temper, arrogance, and a wild streak he couldn't control. Triple H knew it. Ric Flair knew it. Even WWE's audience sensed it. And just weeks after his victory, Evolution turned on him. His own family, Triple H, Batista, Flair, beat him down, leaving him broken. The message was clear. You may be champion, but you're not ready to be the man. That betrayal cut deep, and it began a cycle Randy would struggle with for years, soaring to the top and crashing back down. In 2005, he faced The Undertaker at WrestleMania 21. Fans thought it would be the moment Randy shocked the world. He didn't. The streak lived on, and Randy walked away defeated. But that's what made him fascinating. He wasn't Superman. He wasn't Cena. He was human, flawed, broken, dangerous. And the danger wasn't just in the ring. Backstage, Randy's temper was legendary. He had conflicts with other wrestlers, he destroyed hotel rooms, he clashed with management. Hidden gem number 4. Randy Orton was once suspended for 60 days because of his behavior backstage. WWE almost gave up on him more than once. But here's the paradox. The very flaws that nearly destroyed him made him magnetic on TV. That cold stare, that slow, methodical pace in the ring, that sudden, explosive RKO out of nowhere. Fans believed him because it wasn't an act. Randy Orton wasn't playing a character. He was the character. And then came the transformation that cemented his legacy. The Viper. Gone was the cocky kid. Gone was the loudmouth legend killer. In his place stood a man who spoke less, but struck harder. A predator, unpredictable, cold-blooded, watching, waiting, striking when you least expected it. The RKO became the most dangerous, most loved move in wrestling. So sudden, so shocking. It wasn't just a finisher, it was a cultural phenomenon. Randy could hit it anywhere, on anyone, at any time. Crowds started chanting, RKO! RKO! Memes spread across the internet. Clips went viral. Suddenly, Randy wasn't just a WWE star. He was a pop culture icon. But behind the fame, the battles continued. Injuries piled up. His shoulder, his collarbone, his back. Each time he rose, his body betrayed him. And each time, he came back colder, smarter, more dangerous. And then, there was family. Randy married his first wife, Samantha Speno, in 2007. They had a daughter, Alana, in 2008. For the first time, Randy felt the pull of something bigger than wrestling. But fame and family don't always mix. The road was long. Temptations were everywhere. And Randy's personal life suffered. His marriage eventually ended. Another crash, another burn. And yet, Randy kept climbing back. Every feud, every championship, from John Cena to Triple H, from Batista to CM Punk, Randy was always there. Sometimes loved, sometimes hated, but never ignored.
Because Randy Orton wasn't just a superstar. He was a measuring stick. To make it in WWE, you had to go through him. And here's hidden gem number 5. Randy Orton is one of only a handful of WWE superstars to hold every major title in the company. WWE Championship, World Heavyweight Championship, Intercontinental, Tag Team, U.S. title. He collected them all. By the early 2010s, Randy Orton had gone from the cocky rookie to the dangerous Viper, to a future Hall of Famer in the making. But his story was far from over, because soon, Randy would face the most unpredictable opponent of all: time. The 2010s in WWE were a storm. New faces rose, old legends faded. And in the middle of it all, Randy Orton kept striking. By now, he was no longer the brash rookie or the unstable hothead. He was a veteran. But not just any veteran. He was the standard of excellence. If you could hang with Randy Orton, you belonged. If you couldn't, you were exposed. And then came 2013, the moment that redefined him. At SummerSlam, Daniel Bryan defeated John Cena to win the WWE Championship. The crowd exploded. It was Bryan's fairy tale moment. But fairy tales don't last long in WWE. As Bryan celebrated, Randy Orton's music hit. The Viper walked down the ramp, briefcase in hand, money in the bank. Triple H turned on Bryan with a shocking pedigree, and Randy Orton cashed in. 1, 2, 3. The Viper was champion again. And now he wasn't just Randy Orton. He was the face of the authority. This era showed a different side of him, less unpredictable, more controlled. A weapon in the hands of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Cold, corporate, ruthless. Fans hated him, which of course made him perfect. Randy thrived in that role. He tore down fan favorites. He humiliated Daniel Bryan. He made sure no underdog's dream lasted too long. But wrestling has a funny way of circling back. By the mid-2015s, Randy was no longer just the villain. He became timeless. He feuded with Seth Rollins, Bray Wyatt, Roman Reigns. He delivered unforgettable RKOs that went viral again and again. One of the most famous? WrestleMania 31. Seth Rollins went for the curb stomp. Randy countered, launching Rollins into the air, and bam! RKO in mid-flight. A moment so perfect, it looked like slow-motion destiny. And outside the ring, something else was changing.
But don't confuse peace with weakness, because in the ring, the Viper remained as deadly as ever. In 2017, he defeated Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 33 to capture yet another world title. By now, his championship tally was climbing so high, he was being compared to Ric Flair and John Cena. Could Randy one day break the record? And even as new stars rose, AJ Styles, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Randy kept proving he belonged at the top. Year after year, decade after decade. But perhaps his most surprising reinvention came in 2020. Randy Orton versus Edge. Edge had returned from retirement. Fans were emotional, excited, ready to celebrate. And then Randy struck. His betrayal of Edge was so personal, so brutal, that fans were sickened. It wasn't just a feud. It was a masterpiece of storytelling. And in that storyline, Randy reminded the world, he doesn't need fireworks. He doesn't need catchphrases. All he needs is that icy stare and one perfectly timed RKO. Even in his 40s, Randy Orton was still delivering classics. He formed a tag team with Riddle, RK Bro, and shocked fans again by showing his fun, comedic side. Suddenly, the cold-blooded Viper was entertaining, playful even, and fans loved it. That's the magic of Randy Orton. He can be the most hated villain one year and the most beloved veteran the next. But perhaps his most inspiring part of his story is this: Randy Orton survived. So many wrestlers from his era are gone. Injuries, addictions, demons. Randy had them all. And yet, he endured. He turned his chaos into legacy. He turned his flaws into character. He turned his pain into power. And now, as he enters the later years of his career, fans see him not just as the Viper, but as one of the greatest of all time. A 14-time world champion, a future Hall of Famer, a living legend.
And his story isn't over. Because Randy Orton isn't the kind of man who fades quietly. No, he'll strike again when we least expect it, out of nowhere. From a restless boy in Knoxville, to a young soldier who stumbled in the Marines, to a reckless rookie almost destroyed by his own temper, Randy Orton's journey has been anything but smooth. He's fallen. He's failed. He's broken bones and broken trust. He's been suspended, injured, humiliated. But every single time, he got back up. And when he did, he struck harder. He grew colder, smarter, more dangerous. That's the story of Randy Orton. A man who turned his flaws into fuel. A man who walked the line between chaos and control. A man who became not just a superstar, but a symbol. Think about it. 20-plus years in WWE. 14 world championships. Every major title held. Some of the most unforgettable rivalries in wrestling history. And one finishing move, the RKO, that became a global phenomenon. But beyond the championships, beyond the memes, beyond the viral moments, Randy Orton's true legacy is survival. He survived his demons. He survived the road. He survived the expectations of being born into wrestling royalty. And he didn't just live up to his family's name. He expanded it. He proved that Randy Orton wasn't just Cowboy Bob's son. He was Randy Orton, the Viper, the legend killer, the apex predator, a one-of-a-kind performer we may never see again. And here's the twist that makes his story so powerful. Randy Orton's career is not a story of perfection. It's a story of imperfection, of scars, setbacks, suspensions, and second chances. And isn't that what makes him real? Isn't that what makes him inspiring? Because if Randy Orton can fall that many times and still rise higher every single time, what excuse do we have not to chase our own greatness? The truth is,
Randy Orton's story is still being written. And whether he wins another world title, whether he retires tomorrow, or whether he shocks us all with one final strike, one thing will always be true. When the lights go down, when the crowd goes silent, when the music hits and that cold stare appears on the stage, you'll feel it in your chest. The presence, the danger, the certainty that the Viper is still watching, still waiting, still ready to strike. So the next time you see Randy Orton step into the ring, remember this journey. The boy, the soldier, the rebel, the legend killer, the Viper, the survivor. Because you're not just watching a wrestler, you're watching living history. And if this story gave you chills, if you felt inspired, if you want more journeys like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because just like Randy Orton's RKO, the next legendary story will strike out of nowhere.